When the chandelier fell, Adam pushed me towards death to protect another woman. With my head bleeding, I was so happy that I almost rammed into the wall. The woman who had taken over my body finally failed her mission and was obliterated. After regaining control of my body, I didn't look at Adam again. But he blocked my way with red eyes and asked, "Is it you who's come back?" Chapter 1. Kiss. Kiss. In the middle of the cheers, my face turned red. But I knew Adam wouldn't kiss me. He despised me. Even though we were a couple, he acted like he had swallowed a fly every time he accidentally touched me. Adam stood in the shadows with a glass of wine, his expression unclear. "No kiss, drink a glass of wine," someone urged. He had already drunk too much tonight, and another glass would surely make his stomach hurt. Reluctantly, he leaned in towards me. His breath was on my face, and I nervously closed my eyes. This was my first kiss. The next second, a glass of wine splashed in my face, making it hard to open my eyes. As the liquid trickled down my face, I couldn't tell if it was wine or tears. "Do you really want to kiss me that badly?" He downed another glass and smirked. "I'd rather drink myself to death than touch you." The wine soaked into my collar, sticky and wet. I stood up and walked to the door. He said coldly, "If you leave, we're over." Chapter 2. I wanted to slap him 10 times and storm out. But I obediently walked back. Because ever since waking up from a high fever 2 years ago, I could no longer control my body. The person inside me now was someone else. She had to win Adam over, or she would be obliterated. In the past 2 years, she had used my body to become his most devoted follower. She fought for him, smoked for him, and neglected her studies for him. In the middle of the night, one call from him, and she would rush to the bar to drink for him despite her period. He would cuddle other women while looking at me, who was being forced to drink like crazy, and say, what a good dog." A waiter came in with dishes and walked past me. At this moment, the chandelier above fell. "Sandy." Adam rushed towards us. Was he going to save me? My heart was pounding with anticipation. The next second, he quickly shielded the waiter with his body. Bang! The chandelier fell directly on me. There were gasps from the crowd. Pain spread instantly, and the smell of blood was overwhelming. He stood up and smiled at me. "My girlfriend is so kind, she would surely want to give the chance to be saved to someone else." He emphasized girlfriend to humiliate me. He would rather save a stranger than me, his supposed girlfriend. Chapter 3. However, I breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, he didn't save me. Because this was the impostor's last chance. Mission failed. Host will be obliterated, the system's electronic voice announced. I felt her presence fading away and tried to touch the wound on my head. Yes, I really did it. That impostor had taken over my body for 2 years. How did I survive those 2 years? Ha 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 ha. I couldn't stop laughing. With my head still bleeding, I ran around the room 3 times. I was so happy that I almost crashed into the walls. Adam was dumbfounded. Everyone thought I had gone mad because of him and tried to console me. "Sandy, take it easy." I laughed even harder, gasping for breath, and fainted. Chapter 4. When I woke up in the hospital, I was still smiling. To my surprise, Adam was sitting by my bedside. He set up a small table and opened a takeaway meal. "You didn't die, huh?" I ignored him and ate the bland hospital food with tears streaming down my face. 2 years. I hadn't had a proper meal in 2 years. Adam laughed mockingly, moved to tears over a meal? Idiot. Adam seemed to have a change of heart and began to care for me. He carefully blew on the chicken soup to cool it down for me. "You know Tracy from the debate club? Can you introduce me? I want to pursue her." I sneered. So that's why he's acting so unusual today. He's always like this, giving a sweet treat when he needs something from me. I would always run errands for him eagerly. To him, I was always a sure thing. Too bad, the woman who put him first in everything is gone now. A crisp slap landed on his face. I've wanted to do this for 3 years. So satisfying. He was stunned, pressing his tongue against his reddened cheek, and forced a smile. "You're pretty good at imitating her." His cold, piercing gaze fell on me. "Too bad, the more you imitate, the more disgusting you become." Imitate what? What the hell is wrong with you? Chapter 5. Returning to the debate club felt like a lifetime ago. The members at the routine Saturday meeting looked at me standing at the door in surprise. I nervously twisted my hands. Am I late? Someone sneered, Sandy, did you walk into the wrong place? Shouldn't you be with your boyfriend, serving him instead of coming to our debate club? I didn't dare to retort. They had every right to dislike me. That impostor, in the middle of the International University debate competition, was called away by Adam with just one phone call. That day, I was the fourth speaker. Because of my sudden departure, our school lost miserably. The ridiculous part was, when I hurried over, I found Adam, who had claimed severe stomach pain over the phone, was actually having a good time with his friends. His friends teased, she really came. He glanced at me disdainfully and lazily said, I won the bet. Since that day, I never went back to the debate club. Chapter 6. I mustered up the courage to enter the room. I haven't quit the club. I'm still a member of the debate club. Someone stood up angrily. Now you remember you're a member of the debate club? Back then. Enough. The president, Eric, shouted sternly. She hasn't quit the club, so she has the right and the duty to participate in our meetings. He looked at me with deep, indifferent eyes, as if I were a stranger. Emotions churned in my chest, and I almost cried. Eric was my ex-boyfriend. The day that impostor came, she broke up with him immediately. Heartless and resolute. Despite his desperate pleas, she didn't look back once. When I left during that debate competition, Eric grabbed me, his voice hoarse. Sandy, I'm asking you one last time, are you really leaving for him today? Even if you don't like me anymore, debate has always been your dream. Using my voice, the impostor said word by word, now, Adam is my dream. This sentence made his tears fall instantly. The proud young man, with red eyes, let go of my hand. His always straight spine seemed to break. Chapter 7. Now, there was someone else by his side. Tracy glanced at him cautiously and tried to mediate. Yeah, Sandy is still one of us in the debate club. Tracy, from the foreign language department, joined the debate club solely for Eric. She was average at debating but very sociable. In just 1 year, she had become the vice president. She sat rightfully next to Eric. She smiled gently, Sandy, you came at the right time. I just ordered afternoon tea for everyone. Could you go pick it up for us? Someone chimed in, yeah, even if you joined the club early, you're just an ordinary member now. You should run errands for everyone. Eric raised his eyes to look at me but said nothing. I went to pick up the afternoon tea for the 21 members of the debate club alone. She was clearly making things difficult for me. But it was what I deserved. I nodded and agreed. Chapter 8. The 21 cups of milk tea were heavier than I expected. I had to make several trips. Just when my hands felt like they were going to break, Adam walked over. He glanced at the delivery order and chuckled with his hands in his pockets. For the debate club. You were so tough that day, but now you're back at the debate club, helping me chase Tracy. As he finished speaking, the hand reaching out to take the milk tea from me suddenly stopped. I turned to see Eric. He heard it. Tracy pulled him. I told you she had ulterior motives for coming back to the debate club, but you didn't believe me and insisted on helping her. Eric remained silent for a few seconds, then coldly took the milk tea from my hands. No matter why she returned to the debate club, there's no reason for a girl to fetch 21 cups of milk tea alone. Wait. I held his hand, took a cup of milk tea from the delivery bag, and smiled as I waved it at Adam. Adam, your favorite mint green tea. Over the past 2 years, I ran countless errands in the cold and heat to get this milk tea for Adam. He wouldn't let me order delivery, bossing me around with his legs crossed. A delivery guy isn't as fast as you. Now he sneered at me, are you crazy? I'm not desperate enough to drink someone else's milk tea. The next second, the milk tea splashed in his face. His hair, face, and clothes were dripping with milk tea. He wiped his face, staring at me in disbelief. I smiled sweetly. This mint green tea that Tracy bought is my breakup gift to you. Do you like it? I turned to the dumbfounded Tracy. I'll compensate you for this cup of milk tea. Also, my only reason for coming back to the debate club is to debate. Without another glance at Adam, I turned to get the remaining milk tea at the school gate, but he suddenly grabbed me. His eyes were red with anger. "This is your final warning, don't imitate her." He almost crushed my wrist. I don't hit women, but if there's a next time, I can't guarantee I'll control myself. I kicked Adam in the chest. "Sorry, I only hit scumbags like you." I used all my strength, and he doubled over, clutching his chest in pain. Looking down at him, I said, "My final warning to you, I'm not imitating anyone." Then I frowned in disdain. "It's been 4 years, and you haven't improved a bit at fighting." He looked up in shock, his eyes gradually turning red. He looked just like he did the first time I saw him. Chapter 9. My first encounter with Adam was not in college but in high school, during our second year. After evening self-study, he was cornered by some students from another school in an alley. 5 against 1, he was gradually losing. I helped him out. After the thugs scattered, he collapsed with a thud, as if his bones had fallen apart. "Hey!" When I turned to leave, he suddenly called out to me. I looked back. He sat under the dim streetlight, looking up at me with wet eyes for a long time. "I'll remember you," he said. Chapter 10. My thoughts returned to the present. I ignored the still stunned Adam and carried the milk tea back to the debate club. Eric was gone. Having delayed too long with Adam, a junior angrily snatched the bag from my hand. "Both presidents went to help you, and you still took forever to get the milk tea. Besides falling in love, can you do anything right?" I suppressed my anger. "You're a freshman, I'm a junior. Can't you call me senior? If you can't even address people properly, what can you do?" She was stumped by my words, angrily slamming the milk tea on the table, and suddenly screamed. "1 cup is missing. So, senior, besides falling in love, you're also good at stealing delivery." She emphasized the word senior with smug satisfaction. Her voice was loud, and everyone turned to stare at me. No way, did she steal a drink on the way just because it wasn't hers? Turns out she came back to the debate club just to steal delivery. No wonder she agreed so quickly. Tracy lowered her head, with a slight smile, making no effort to defend me. I tried to explain, "I accidentally spilled one earlier, but I've already ordered a replacement. I'll go pick it up when it arrives." The junior scoffed, "You couldn't even handle picking up milk tea properly. Now we're short 1 cup. How embarrassing and disruptive." I blushed with embarrassment. It was actually me who spilled a cup earlier. Sandy shouldn't take the blame for it. A familiar voice rang out, and the noisy meeting room instantly fell silent. I turned around. It was the missing Eric. He seemed to have jogged over, sweat beading on his forehead, and his voice slightly breathless. He held up 2 bottles of sparkling water. "You all can have the milk tea, she and I will drink this." He handed me 1 bottle, speaking in an official tone. "Buy 1, get 1 free. Helping you has no other meaning. If I didn't step in, we'd argue about this milk tea for half an hour. You know I hate having my time wasted." I stared at the sparkling water in my hand. It was my favorite white peach oolong. He still remembered. Tracy handed me a cup of milk tea, smiling innocently. "I really like this flavor of sparkling water. Can we trade?" She probably wasn't that fond of the sparkling water but liked the fact that Eric bought it. Everyone's eyes were on us. A few girls looked at me with sharp, hostile gazes, as if they would kick me out if I dared to refuse. I was caught in a dilemma. Chapter 11. I didn't want to trade, but rejecting her now would offend the entire debate club again. Just as I was about to agree, Eric spoke calmly. "Your milk tea has ice. She can't have cold drinks right now." I was a bit surprised he still remembered my menstrual cycle. Besides, the supermarket has a whole shelf of sparkling water. You can drink as much as you want. Tracy gave an awkward laugh, then sipped her milk tea, embarrassed. Eric led me to the meeting table. "Let's start the meeting." As soon as I sat down, the sparkling water on the table was unscrewed and handed to me. Seeing my surprised look, he said indifferently, "I opened the wrong one. I thought it was mine." A subtle feeling rose in my heart. Could he still have feelings for me? However, as he resumed chairing the meeting with a calm demeanor, I realized I was overthinking it. Because he was clearly targeting me. Chapter 12. This meeting was mainly for new members, focused on explaining the basics of debate. However, the always composed and professional Eric almost turned this meeting into a personal interrogation of me. This was unprofessional and very un-Eric. When he talked about the debate World Cup, his intense gaze fell on me. Sandy, what was the final topic of the 2018 Debate World Cup? That debate was our favorite, and we watched it countless times together. When he talked about how to break down the topic and build an argument, he used the topics we debated together to question me. His eyes stayed on me, seemingly calm yet turbulent. I didn't understand his intention, only feeling anger. Did he think I wouldn't remember these? When I answered his 8th question, even the new members sensed the unusual atmosphere. They whispered, "What's going on between Senior Sandy and the president?" Someone whispered back, "Ex-girlfriend. She dumped the president and immediately found someone else." Wow, isn't that cheating? She's so despicable. This was the first time I saw Eric lose his temper. Chapter 13. His knuckles rapped heavily on the blackboard, his gaze intense, his voice deep. No talking. Questions can only be asked during the Q&A session. This is the basic etiquette of debate tournaments. Didn't I just mention this? The two people fell silent, ashamed. Yes, he must especially hate this disgraceful past related to me. After the meeting, Eric seemed particularly exhausted, even his voice sounded hoarse. Sandy, I used to think I knew you very well, your tastes, your dreams, your strengths and weaknesses. But later, I realized I might have never truly understood you, even feeling like I knew nothing about you. His eyes gradually filled with pain. Just like now, I'm not sure if you're the same Sandy I knew, nor do I understand why you returned today. I felt like crying. Of course, you wouldn't understand because we are two different people. I struggled to speak, actually. Tracy pushed the door open. Chapter 14. She smiled playfully at us. Eric, it's time to go. If you're any later, your mom will worry. He replied gently, okay. All the explanations I had prepared swallowed back down. They had come this far, what was the point of explaining to him? He looked at me, still waiting for my answer. I opened my mouth and finally said, if you can't understand, then don't bother. Just focus on the people around you. He laughed angrily, fine. Chapter 15. Today was my first debate competition in 2 years. Tracy was on the affirmative side, and I was on the negative side. A group of people cheered her on. Go, Vice President, defeat her completely. The Vice President isn't great at debating. Can she really win? That's still better than a deserter. I didn't respond, only feeling intense excitement and a desire to win as I watched Tracy's nervous expression. Only by winning decisively could I rejoin the school debate team and compete at higher levels. I gave Tracy no room to breathe, pressing her hard, even making her cry during the cross-examination stage. When I finished speaking, the room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Everyone could see the outcome was decided. The loudest applause came from Adam in the audience. I was speechless. Did this idiot really understand what had happened? Tracy lost, yet he was applauding? And so enthusiastically. Chapter 16. After the debate, Tracy's face was drenched with tears. A group of people surrounded her, offering comfort. Sandy was way too harsh. Yeah, it was just an in-club training match. Why take it so seriously? She pitifully clutched Eric's arm, her voice trembling, Eric. I didn't want to see their affectionate display, so I turned to leave, only to be blocked by Adam. I was exasperated. Are you blind? Tracy's over there. His eyes reddened bit by bit. Is it really? You who's back? I was stunned. He seemed to know that the person in my body before wasn't me. He suddenly smiled, a tear on the verge of falling from his eyes. It's you, isn't it? The Sandy who saved me 4 years ago, the Sandy who dominated the debate stage. A wave of emotion surged in my heart. He really had remembered me, just as he said. Even when my body was taken over by someone else, he knew it wasn't me. The moment I gently nodded, the tear in his eye fell hard. Chapter 17. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you at first sight. As if he couldn't hold back anymore, he bent down and hugged me tightly. I'm so glad you're back. I thought I'd never see you again. The Adam who usually despised being touched was now embracing me fiercely, as if afraid I'd disappear into thin air and he needed to bind me tightly. I stood there, stunned. In the 2 years I had followed Adam, I'd seen countless versions of him. The way he frowned in disgust at me, his disdainful disregard for my efforts, even his harsh and severe looks. But I had never seen him so careful and gentle. Unbeknownst to me, Eric was slowly prying Tracy's hand off. Crying over losing an in-club training match. Seems like your mindset is worse than your skills. However, when he turned and walked towards me, he saw me tightly embraced by Adam. He stopped in his tracks, clenching and unclenching his fists repeatedly. Finally, he turned and threw the gift he had prepared for me into the trash, lowering his eyes with a self-mocking smile. Eric, why are you such a fool? He said to himself. Chapter 18. I spoke coldly, have you hugged enough? Let go. The usually defiant Adam obediently released me. He behaved like a little puppy. I sneered, why act all sentimental? Weren't you interested in Tracy just a few days ago? He shook his head anxiously, I wasn't. He looked very desolate. I said I'd pursue her because she reminds me of you. And because I hated the person in your body so much. The more she wanted something, the more I denied it to her. I was puzzled, why? She treated you so well. He laughed at himself, she was nice to me because she wanted something from me. She said she loved me, but she didn't really like me. Chapter 19. He fell silent, his eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions, finally speaking softly. I liked someone too, so I know what it looks like to truly like someone. She approached me with a purpose, just like many others. Every time she looked at me, it was like she was looking at a trophy. I'm all too familiar with that look. If I showed any genuine feelings, she would ruthlessly crush them. More importantly, I always thought she was the one who killed you, so I hated her. He forced a smile, but his eyes were filled with tears. For these 2 years, I tried every way to torment her to avenge you. But seeing her in pain also pained me because it was your body. I was so afraid you'd never come back, and also afraid that if you did, you'd hate me. He asked cautiously, Sandy, do you hate me now? I was silent for a long time, not knowing what to say. Finally, I raised my hand and gently patted his slightly trembling back. None of us noticed that Tracy, who had been crying her heart out a moment ago, was now glaring at Adam with eyes burning with anger. Chapter 20. I smoothly rejoined the school debate team and represented the school in the International Debate Championship preliminaries. Debate club discussion meeting. Walking into the meeting room, I noticed a Starbucks cup and a delicate cake on each person's seat. Everyone was delighted. Vice President, today's afternoon tea is so lavish. You're really going all out to boost morale. Tracy shook her head, I didn't buy it. Adam walked in carrying a large bag of fruit. It's my treat. Sandy had nothing to do with it. It's all my fault. I'm here to apologize and cheer everyone on for the competition. From now on, we'll have such afternoon tea every day. Feel free to let me know if there's anything you want. Cheers erupted. Tracy's gaze lingered on Adam for a long time before she sneered, Adam, you're so generous and thoughtful to your girlfriend. Eric stared at the refreshments, his face stern. The debate club isn't a tea house. Adam wasn't angry, instead, he provocatively smiled, then I'll treat everyone to dinner. You can choose the place. Enough. I glared at Adam. You, come with me. Chapter 21. I immediately confronted him, what are you doing? Adam lost his previous momentum, I'm afraid they'll make things difficult for you because of what happened before. He looked at me seriously. I always made you run errands for me before. Now you can pay me back for everything I did to you. You can scold me, order me around, insult me. I even have wine ready. You can pour it on me whenever you want. I sighed, you don't have to do this. I don't blame you for what happened before. He was silent for a few seconds, his eyelashes trembling, you don't hate me? I nodded. And you don't like me either, right? I nodded again. He looked very sad but still smiled. That's why I have to pursue you. I want you to like me. He was very stubborn. Sandy, I don't want to just be your friend. After that day, Adam's afternoon tea arrived even more punctually than we did. No matter how I scolded him or gave him the cold shoulder, he accepted it all with a smile and refused to change. I didn't know that during that time, Eric would always watch from a distance as Adam and I argued. His head lowered in desolation. Chapter 22. Our school successfully made it through the preliminaries and advanced to the finals of the International Debate Championship. To celebrate, the debate club went out for dinner on the weekend. Eric, who usually didn't touch alcohol, drank a lot, and no one could persuade him otherwise. In the end, he was so drunk he was unconscious. Tracy patted his back gently. I'll take him home. I've already called his sister. Her words stopped my hand, which had been reaching out to support him. Of course, she had met his family. They were practically a couple. How could a mere ex-girlfriend like me compare? Watching Tracy help Eric into the car, I tilted my head back and downed my drink. The alcohol burned, making me want to cry. After the gathering ended, I didn't take a cab. I walked home slowly, only to find Eric, who had been sent home by Tracy, sitting at my doorstep. Chapter 23. I squatted down to look at him. He seemed to be asleep. Asleep, Eric lost his usual seriousness, looking as obedient as a child. I poked his chest and teased. Who knows how big your heart is, always carrying so much inside. Even asleep, your brows are furrowed. Saying this, I reached out to smooth the furrows on his brow. He suddenly opened his eyes, grabbing my wrist. I felt a sense of shame at being caught in the act and hurriedly tried to pull my hand back. But his grip was too tight, and with one tug, he slipped from his seated position and fell to the ground with a loud thud. I quickly helped him up. Are you okay? Did you hit anything? He was too drunk to answer, only repeating, What do I do? What do I do? It's broken, broken. Chapter 24. Afraid he had hurt himself, I asked anxiously, What's broken? He took out a crushed half-baked cheesecake from his pocket, his eyes reddening with distress. The cheesecake is broken. It's over, you won't forgive me now. My heart tightened. When we first started dating, he took our arguments as seriously as debates, making me cry out of anger. He panicked, and I refused all his gifts, resolutely refusing to forgive him. But I was so hungry and ended up eating a piece of the cheesecake he bought. He almost moved the entire shop to me, apologizing. I raised my head and asked him, Will you still argue with me like it's a debate in the future? He shook his head like a rattled drum. Then what should you do? He tilted his head, thinking for a long time before saying, Admit my mistake, apologize, and buy cheesecake. I was so angry that I laughed. I didn't expect he'd really make it a habit later on. When that other girl broke up with him, he stood outside the dormitory with a bunch of cheesecakes, waiting for her all night. But she stomped them into pieces and spat, Who wants to eat this stuff? Chapter 25. I picked up the broken cheesecake and took a big bite. It's okay, it can still be eaten even if it's broken. He grabbed my hand, resting his forehead against mine, the heat of his skin and the scent of alcohol mingling. He choked out, My heart isn't that big, it only holds you. Sandy, I don't want to look at anyone else. His tears fell, landing on the back of my hand. Please, don't eat the cake someone else bought for you. I have money too, I can buy you cake. It took me a moment to realize he was still thinking about Adam's afternoon tea. He started rummaging for money, but couldn't find a single bill, tears welling up in frustration. What do I do? I think I have no money. This cheesecake might even be stolen. Idiot, we use mobile payments now. I comforted him, It's okay, I like you even if you have no money. He leaned in closer, enveloping me in his clean scent. His gaze burned, What did you say? I like you even if you have no money. Before I could finish, he captured my words with his mouth, tasting them carefully and swallowing them whole. He pulled me into his arms, his hot hand cradling my neck. His warmth and scent washed over me, seeping into my blood, pulsing back to my heart. Chapter 26. The next morning, I was awakened by his incessantly vibrating phone. I sat up and watched as he finished the call and tiptoed back. What, got caught cheating by Tracy? He was so angry he nearly threw his phone. What nonsense are you talking about? It was my sister. I teased. Oh right, your sister and Tracy are on the same team. He leaned against the door frame, smiling playfully. What team? What are you imagining? She just tutored my sister in English a few times. Are you jealous? I pouted, no. He came over and kissed me with good humor. All right, you're not jealous. It was just me getting happy for nothing. Then his expression turned sad. But did you ever get jealous over him? Did he kiss you like this? I kissed the corner of his eye. No, I never liked him. He looked up, surprised. Chapter 27. I thought if I told him about the game strategy and my time travel, he'd think I was crazy. But he listened as attentively as he would in a debate. I joked, are you planning to send me to a mental hospital? He shook his head, holding my hand tenderly. These past 2 years have been so hard for you. I'd rather you truly fell in love with Adam, willingly giving up everything for him. At least that would be your own choice, instead of watching your life get messed up by someone else and being unable to do anything, not even see an end to your suffering. He reddened with guilt. I'm sorry I couldn't help you during those hard times. I even argued with you when you finally came back. He raised his hand and swore, Eric will always stand unconditionally by Sandy's side from now on. The tears I had held back for so long flooded out. Before telling him, I had imagined all sorts of reactions from him. Shock or anger. But I never expected his eyes to be filled only with concern for me. Chapter 28. The finals of the International Debate Championship were held in Australia. This competition was especially important to me. I urgently needed a grand victory to wash away my dark past. However, on the day of departure, I couldn't help but fall into a deep sleep after getting into the taxi to the airport. When I woke up, I was horrified to find myself almost naked in a themed hotel room. I could barely muster any strength as I struggled to sit up with the blanket. Seeing the person in front of me was no surprise. It was Tracy. She was fiercely whipping Adam. I thought you didn't like me because I wasn't doing well enough, so I tried even harder to please you. I didn't realize you were deliberately tormenting me for the past 2 years, and in the end, I was ruined. She lashed Adam's back, leaving purple bruises. You showed me a cold face every day, but as soon as she returned, you served her diligently. Now, take all these beatings for her. Noticing my gaze, she turned to stare at me. Chapter 29. I remained calm. So it was you. So, this time your target is Eric, right? She laughed. You're pretty smart, but it's useless. She held my phone in front of me, displaying the WeChat interface. It was my chat history with Eric. She had sent 2 WeChat messages to him from my phone. A photo of me and Adam sleeping together. And a text message. Eric, you're as stupid as you were back then. I won't be going to the finals. Adam and I are having a great time playing with you. I almost bit through my molars, holding back my tears in front of her. Oh, by the way, I also helped you post a status on WeChat Moments. Now everyone knows, Sandy, who deserted for a man 2 years ago. Now she's abandoned the entire debate team again, checking into a love hotel with Adam. Chapter 30. She waved her call log. I've already received the call. I'm about to take your place in the competition you've dreamed of, fighting side by side with your boyfriend. Oh no, he's not your boyfriend anymore. Tears streamed down my face, and the sobs I had suppressed in my chest almost broke through. You're breaking the law. I choked out each word. She laughed crazily. Breaking the law. I used my remaining strategy points to exchange with the system for a reward. It will erase all my traces from the surveillance. She looked down at me. I have the system. You have nothing. How can you win against me? With a wave of her hand, my head began to sink uncontrollably again. Sleep well for this last peaceful sleep. After all, when you wake up, Eric and the championship will be mine. Chapter 31. Sandy, wake up, wake up. I looked at Adam's face in a daze. Where am I? At the airport. The airport. Yes, the 8:30 p.m. flight. You can still make it to tomorrow's debate. I lowered my eyes, tears streaming down, but they don't need me anymore. He proudly took out a mini recorder, his eyes shining. They do need you. She can erase the surveillance, but I recorded it. Sandy, you've waited 2 years for this competition. You have to go and win beautifully. I noticed his left hand wrapped in bandages. What happened to your hand? He hid that hand. It's nothing, just a small injury. Chapter 32. When I rushed to the hotel, the debate team was having their final pre-match meeting. Tracy was familiarizing herself with the points I had painstakingly thought out over countless days and nights, preparing to take my place. I stood at the door, trembling with anger, and pushed the door open, gritting my teeth. As soon as they saw me, the school debate team members almost lunged at me to tear me apart. How dare you come back? Are you treating us like monkeys? Tracy's eyes flashed with a hint of panic, but she quickly put on a righteous indignation expression. She accused me righteously. Sandy, what do you take the competition for? What do you take the debate for? What do you take Eric for? Your pastime when you're bored? He stood quietly at the other end of the room, his face haggard and gray, eyes bloodshot. He looked at me with despair and pity. I fixed my gaze on him, emotions surging, and couldn't help but redden my eyes. I never deserted, nor did I deceive you. Never. Tears fell from his eyes, but he said nothing. Tracy stood up and pushed me towards the door. Leave. No one welcomes you here, and the debate team can win without you. Chapter 33. I pushed Tracy to the ground, suppressing my sobs, speaking every word firmly. It was you. You locked me up and impersonated me to send those WeChat messages and Moments posts. Tracy cried with a face full of tears. Sandy, do you believe these words yourself? Yes, you're better at debating than me. You've always come and gone as you pleased in this competition. I'll give you back your place, so why are you throwing mud at me? Everyone stood on her side, full of lies. Tracy may not be as good at debating as you, but she has a much better character than you. We don't need you back now, get out. I cried in grievance. Eric, do you believe me? He looked at me quietly, and after a long while, he spoke firmly. I believe you. Tracy stood up incredulously, shouting. She has no evidence. Are you condemning me based on her words alone? Eric, you study law. Have you forgotten the presumption of innocence? Chapter 34. He walked towards me and held my hand. I haven't forgotten, but I remember even more that I promised her I'd always stand by her unconditionally. Who said she has no evidence? Adam rushed in. He glanced at the tightly clasped hands of Eric and me, his eyes dimming slightly. Sorry, I was just settling the taxi fare. Sorry to keep you waiting. He walked over to Tracy and took out the mini recorder. This is the recording of Tracy imprisoning Sandy and me, and beating me. Tracy's face instantly turned pale. Adam smirked. Now let me share with everyone our charming, beloved Vice President Tracy. Before he could finish, Tracy rushed up and smashed the recorder. Chapter 35. She slapped Adam across the face and grabbed his collar, cursing him. Idiot. How many times do you want to ruin me? Don't you love her so much? I gave you such a good opportunity. As long as Eric breaks up with her, she'll eventually be with you. Adam, however, smiled. What would someone like you know about real love? He lifted his head, smiling as tears began to fall. When I love someone, I want to give her the ending she wants most. Tracy turned and hugged Eric, crying. This is my last chance for redemption. Please, let me take Sandy's place in this competition, or I'll be completely erased. Eric looked down at her. Completely erased? Does that mean you won't be able to exist in this world in any form? She nodded desperately. It won't matter much if Sandy doesn't participate in this competition, but I will really die. Eric squatted down. In that case. She saw hope and tearfully begged, please, I really don't want to die. Chapter 36. Eric smiled, enunciating each word clearly. That's wonderful. She stood there, stunned, then began to laugh maniacally. Finally, she collapsed with a loud thud, completely silent. Everyone was terrified. Is she dead? I shook my head. Let's take her to the hospital first. The real Tracy should come back soon. Chapter 37. In that competition, our school won the championship. I was awarded Best Debater. After returning to our country, Tracy submitted her resignation from the debate club to Eric. She flipped her hair coolly. "I only joined this debate club for you. I can't believe you're so blind. I've chased you for 2 years, and you still like her. After being possessed by someone else, I realize how great it is to be alive. I won't waste my wonderful life on you anymore." With that, she turned and left, waving goodbye with her back to us. Eric smiled and held my hand. "She's right. I can't waste such a wonderful life either." I raised an eyebrow. "So?" He leaned down, his eyes sparkling. "So? I'll be sticking with you for the rest of my life."
Adam's story. Adam's family was very wealthy, and their house was so large that he often got lost in it as a child. He thought his parents must have gotten lost too, which is why they never came home. Little Adam thought this and cried himself to sleep. Later, when he grew up, he no longer wanted his parents to come home. Because when they did, all they did was argue, and sometimes they even fought. His father had another woman outside, and his mother had her own lover. Only he was alone, both at home and outside. In fact, he had many friends, but he didn't see them as friends. Because they didn't want to be friends with him, they wanted to be friends with his money. They would only warmly embrace him when it was time to pay the bill at a dinner or subtly hint that they really wanted a pair of sneakers right before their birthday. At those times, they seemed like his truest friends. But behind his back, they secretly called him that rich fool. He knew this, but he didn't really mind. At least they made him look less lonely. In high school, he didn't like studying and loved fighting, accidentally becoming the school bully. The day he met Sandy, he and a friend were cornered by a group of enemies in an alley. That group didn't look friendly and even had weapons. His friend, trembling, pointed at him. "It's him who provoked you, not me." Then he quickly ran away, faster than anyone Adam had ever seen. He thought he was going to be beaten to death or left crippled. He wondered if his parents would be sad if he died. He thought this as a punch landed on him. Probably not. He shook his head and laughed self-deprecatingly. He even thought that dying in a heated fight like this would be kind of cool. At least he wouldn't be alone. He was so afraid of being alone. So when the next punch came, he calmly faced it. But the expected pain didn't come. The punch was intercepted by someone. He recognized her as the girl who was always receiving awards on the podium. She could fight, and she was good at it. Seeing her face illuminated by the dim streetlight, he felt a piece of his heart sink. He initially thought she saved him to get close to him. But she didn't. She turned and left that day and never sought him out again. As if she had forgotten about him. But he couldn't forget her, never could. He began to notice her uncontrollably. She was great at academics and loved debating. He listened to many of her debates, unable to praise her much but thinking she was as great at debating as she was at fighting. Something seemed to take root, grow, and flourish in his heart. Later, he realized that was called liking someone. At that time, he only knew he wanted the best for her. So, he found people to beat up those who had cornered him and warned them not to disturb her. He didn't dare disturb her himself, so he always watched from afar, not even having the courage to talk to her. After that, he never fought again and studied like crazy. He wanted to attend the same university as her, to stand by her side legitimately. No one expected that the good-for-nothing rich kid would score so high on the college entrance exam, though he could only enroll in the worst major at her university. He memorized her class schedule better than anyone, racking his brain every day to create chances to meet her by coincidence. He finally became her friend, but only a friend. Because she soon got together with someone else. That day he drank himself nearly to death. He thought he could only be her friend for life. But then Sandy suddenly broke up and confessed to him. Though this happiness came rather strangely, he was overjoyed. They soon got together, and he quickly noticed something was wrong. She wasn't Sandy at all. He knew her. Sandy would never give up debating and herself for anyone she loved. The girl who had saved him in the moonlight that night was gone. Replaced by this woman with ulterior motives. She seemed to want his love. She repeatedly humbled herself to please him, just to make him love her. So, he trampled on her dignity and heart repeatedly because she disgusted him. Sometimes, looking at the woman who obeyed his every word, he thought she was truly stupid. She didn't need to do anything but imitate Sandy, and he would have obediently loved her. But his Sandy might never come back. When he saw Tracy at the debate, he seemed to see a shadow of Sandy. He wanted to grasp even just a shadow of her. So he told the infiltrator he wanted to pursue Tracy. But he didn't expect her to reject him harshly, her disdainful look reminiscent of Sandy. He initially thought she was imitating Sandy, but he gradually and joyfully realized that Sandy seemed to be back. That day, sitting in the audience, he almost cried while listening to her debate. Because he finally confirmed that Sandy was truly back.